No, I received it from myself as a member of the committee
What time?
this afternoon at that time.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
there's so many emails.
You know, that amendment looked good to me.
3:34.
Andy is still trying to get in.
Keep the door locked. Came in at 3:34, Tom Walters.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It basically have an insert on page line 1, line 5, specifying funds and providing the appropriations, and then it deletes section 2 on page 2, lines 12 through 22, and inserts a new section 2 that just is a quick short description that says that it will be funded from the budget in a section 313 bill.
Great.
Yeah, what's up, Slick? And I double checked with LSO to make sure that we weren't stepping outside our boundaries a little bit. They said it was fine.
Question.
So actually got to move the amendment.
Move the amendment.
I'll second it.
Amendment as provided has been moved by Representative Larson, seconded by Representative Kinner. Further discussions on the amendment? All those in favor, raise their hand. I think Walters is frozen. So is, there we go. Okay, the amendment passes. Now back on the bill. Any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a brief bit of discussion on the bill, just a little food for thought here. As we move the funding into the to the budget bill, the rest of the bill really becomes unnecessary because the study is already required in statute. The biggest thing that this bill does now is require the commission to report back to JAC and to the Select School Facilities Commission. However, we have other statutes that require reports to come to the Select School Facilities Commission. So there could be an argument to be made that we could pass this bill, but then ask it to just remain on the back burner through the March session. And then as long as the money stays in, we get the amendment into the budget bill and the money stays in that bill, this one, the budget bill, this bill would not necessarily be needed going forward. So the biggest reason for this bill was a vehicle to get the funding in front of JAC so that we could have the discussion.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense to have the bill out there and ready to go and passed maybe even through the House before it goes. And so it's sitting there so if something happens with the budget, we can do something about it. Your preference?
I'd like to keep two horses in the race, so I'd say pass it today, and we can work with our legislative leaders to see if we want to pass it through the House and then hold it back for the March session after that. I don't know that it needs to cross over to the session in the upcoming 7 days necessarily.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay, everyone good with that? I keep getting people cutting out or freezing up.
With that, I'd call the question on the bill. And
okay, let's wait for Andy to pull in here. Are other people seeing Lloyd freeze up and Simpson, Evan freezing up?
No.
Hi, Andy.
I'm hooked up to the hard line, so that it's interesting that I'm freezing up and you guys are not.
So, Mr. Chairman, if we're breaking up, it's me, not you.
I think it's too bad you got your hair cut too short and you're frozen.
Break it up is hard to do.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you're voting on House Bill 2, School Buildings and Facilities Study as amended. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Schwartz.
Aye.
Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
aye.
And Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
7 aye, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's go to House Bill 29. And I got a draft amendment that I'll circulate now from the chair that basically incorporates, it does a few things, but it incorporates our bill as well as does a few modifications. But all in all, in terms of the budget, it's all the same numbers. So I hope I didn't delete it. Let me look here for Dan.
Mr. Chairman, I think that was the amendment from Dan Zwanitzer, or Representative Zwanitzer you're referring to.
Right, did everyone else get that?
He sent it to all Appropriations
Okay.
Committee members, yes.
That's what I wanted to find out. Never mind then. So you've got it. And
it's from who?
Dan
Representative Zwanitzer.
came in around 122.
Okay.
And we don't really need that to review the bill or the budget, but it does take care of our bill. And it just kind of does a few things with where the money goes and stuff like that, but nothing significant. So if I'll just take us to the bill. I don't think Dan's not here to describe it. Is there anyone else in there, Ryan? I don't see my participants. Let me go here.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Jeremiah Ryman just raised his hand and I entered him into the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, check and see. Let him in, please.
Mr. Chairman, what I like about this bill is they address the concern that we talked about in appropriations. The new language there accounts for all indigent burials, and so it brings in the county commission that they have the ability to recoup costs for all of those, except for those that was involved in those programs that we saw with DFS. And so then the treasurer's office then can a year later reimburse the counties for the indigent burials, and then reimburse DFS for those burials that they had to pay for through that program. So, and it's all done through those fees. So I think it accomplishes what we was trying to do.
I think so, yeah. Jeremiah, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm happy to answer any questions. If the amendment is what I believe it is, and the chairman and I have been communicating about that, what it does is perhaps distribute the money a bit more than it had in its original version. Its original iteration would have made the Department of Family Services essentially equal to each of the 23 counties. The amendment that I've been discussing with the department with Representative Zwanitzer would allow for 50% to go to DFS and 50% be available for those indigent burial expenses that the counties would have, and that would be reimbursable. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to go through other elements of the bill and discuss that and sort of its origin, but I don't want to belabor any points here. But certainly my members are supportive of this bill and would appreciate your support as well.
Okay. Yeah, we're not going to go into the specifics of the bill other than the dollars. So is there a motion?
Do pass.
Motion by Representative Larson, seconded by Representative. I got all frozen legislators on my screen.
Walters.
Walters.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is on House Bill 29. Before we move on, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you guys did not adopt that amendment, the Zwanitzer amendment?
No, it's not. We can't adopt amendments like that in
Great.
re-referrals.
Just wanted to clarify. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, you're voting on House Bill 29, burials for indigent persons. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson,
Aye.
Representative Schwartz,
Aye.
Representative Simpson,
Aye.
Representative Stith,
Aye.
Representative Walters,
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
7-0.
Okay, next we got House Bill 18, military training memorials. Do we have anyone out there to work on that with us?
Yeah, I'm bringing him in right now, Mr. Chairman.
I see Don. Anybody else? I see Joe McGuire. Anybody else?
I think that will be it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, can you walk us through the appropriation in this bill, please?
The appropriation is very small. What it does is it calls for if there are discretionary funds left within YDOT, and I believe that I can use the department name because it's named in the bill. Then up to $20,000, there could be a 50-50 match with a private entity such as the Friends of the Wyoming Veterans Museum, who put up memorials around the state for past training accidents that occurred in the state. At this time, the director has testified that there are no discretionary funds left at this point. So any memorials that would be put up would be 100% by the private entities. And the important part of the bill, in my opinion, is it creates a structure so that both the Department of Transportation can approve the design and the placement, and also the the Adjutant General of the Wyoming National Guard will have final approval of the design of the memorial. So it creates a structure where both of those agencies make sure that it's appropriate and something that they can stand behind.
So I'm just curious, Joe, why do you give authority to the Adjutant General?
Because we thought it would be most appropriate to make sure that the Adjutant General just had a final approval, that the wording and the placement and the style and everything was in a manner that would be keeping and respectful with our military.
Okay, any other questions? Any questions? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I actually have a
Andy,
question.
So I don't even have pictures on for 4 of you.
Well, may I proceed? So can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. The Representative McGuire, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative McGuire, since, let me go back, the fiscal, I mean, we know this is not general fund, because it is not generally funded. Yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion to the answer, but what would the source be of these appropriated dollars that are not spent?
And Representative Schwartz, I have not had any trouble all day until you started to ask me that question, and then you froze up and I couldn't hear your question. So if you don't mind, if you could repeat that for me, please.
Representative McGuire, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Just what's the source of the funding? It's not general fund. Just
It's funds that would be left over, already appropriated funds that would have been returned and are left over within the Wyoming Department of Transportation.
so that could be federal monies, gas tax,
It
whatever.
would be, yeah, they're not a general fund agency, so yeah, it'd be gas tax or returns. They do have some certain parameters, so they can't necessarily grab different things, but they do have discretionary funds and would be within their discretionary funds that are returned. Again, they let a contract, it's not all used, it comes back, and they have some discretionary funds.
Thank you.
Did Chairman Burkhardt agree to do a personal donation, matching donation for this?
Well, interestingly, several members of the legislature have donated to a different memorial that will be placed in the same area. In fact, one of them is on this committee, and we appreciate his generosity very much.
To
Representative
answer
Larson.
the chairman's question, it wasn't me.
No, it was,
How come we have unstable internet all of a sudden?
It's
Go ahead,
just,
Representative Larson. I can't hear you. You're muted. Still muted.
Thank you, and so I apologize, Mr. Chairman. So I was curious on that. I was struggling with a little bit, went back and looked, so I finally emailed Don and asked him how that would work, and Representative McGuire certainly right, but he says it would be from funds appropriated from special revenue or highway funds, and it would only allow, as Representative McGuire said, it allows the YDOT to do that if they have some funds that they think are excess. It's not requiring them to do it. So, but that would be the source.
Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in discussions with the director of YDOT about our 10 rest stops that are closed right now and will continue to be closed. I have a hard time supporting this bill because apparently there is no leftover excess money because we can't open the rest stops. And so I don't know why we're advocating for memorials and we have a serious shortage of funds within YDOT. So can someone help me get over that?
I can, and I sent a slide deck, and I don't know, I don't seem to have the share button on mine, but it would be the fifth picture in the slide deck if Ryan can put that up easily without freezing the internet. But what we're looking to do is we're looking to put up some signs similar to what you see in a rest area right now. They cost about $5,000. And the original intent was a 50-50 match. So that would be $2,500 from the state from discretionary funds and $2,500 from the private entities. For example, the Friends of the Wyoming Veterans Museum, Boy Scout groups. We're looking to maybe do one with the veterans at the Soldiers and Sailors Home for Bomber Mountain. Right now, if there are no funds available, that's fine. It still gives us a structure so that the private groups, we can raise the $5,000 and put it up. And we're not trying to, I understand that every dollar is very dear right now, but $2,500 in the big scheme of things, it gives the Department of Transportation a little bit of skin in the game and a little bit of incentive to move forward with it and not just let them languish. What we're looking for is if we put forward these efforts and we get people signed up and we have money donated, that they will help us with the engineering and everything so that we can get them erected.
Representative Schwartz.
thank you. Just to follow up on Representative Simpson, every year that I've been on this committee, when the Department of Transportation comes in, they tell us they're 3 years behind in maintenance money. I have no problem with this bill passing, but I cannot support the appropriation.
I can understand that.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Larson.
However, I would just throw the caveat in there for Representative Simpson and Representative Schwartz. It does not require the Department of Transportation. It's not a shall. It's and they get to call the shots whether they have any discretionary funds left to help on the request or not. It provides mechanism if they are available, but if they're not, it's not a required amount. So rest stops could certainly be open before they start funding signs.
And it was intentionally drafted that everything was a may and nothing is a shall in this. Again, we're looking for cooperation. We're not looking to try and force or anything else. And if there are no funds available, there are no funds available. We'll move forward as a private entity and we'll fund it completely. We'll do it 100% with private funds.
Okay, further questions? Seeing none. Do we have a motion?
Move the bill do pass.
Moved by Representative Walters, second by Representative Kinner. Roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Kinner,
Aye.
Representative Larson,
Aye.
Representative Schwartz,
No.
Representative Simpson,
No.
Representative Stiff,
Aye.
Representative Walters,
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. Okay, last but not least, or maybe it is the least, House Bill 17. Don, why do they need $300,000?
Mr. Chairman, if Ryan would let Clarence Stiver in, he can explain it.
Welcome, Representative Stiver. You're on mute. Could you tell us a little bit about the appropriation for the $300,000 for the Guernsey area and a few others?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Back in June of last year, Secretary of Defense put out a memo that they could no longer use the funds through the federal side to take care of the range. There's 61,000 acres of Guernsey, and they need the money to start their program. They usually put about last year $376,374 18-19 biennium from the base fees for the grazing allotments. It's for mitigation of fires and stuff, and working with the community. And what they don't spend will, as they get their fees in, they will revert back to the general fund at the end of the year.
So my question, you say that their annual grazing fees are roughly, or their biannual grazing fees will cover this cost, is that right? What's this?
What I'm looking here, the grazing fees, Colonel Smith or Chris Smith can help me out on this. The average amount allotted general fund for the biennium. Go ahead, Colonel Smith.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Chris Smith, the senior attorney for the Wyoming Military Department. The grazing fees generate over $500,000 in the biennium. What has happened that's caused this bill to be drafted is the Secretary of Defense, as Representative Stiver mentioned, told us we can no longer have federal employees or federally reimbursed state employees run the grazing program because the Department of Defense has decided any tangential benefit to third parties, such as the state of Wyoming, is no longer allowed. And what that has meant is the 6,100 acres we currently graze at Camp Guernsey would have to stop because approximately 20 federal employees or federally reimbursed employees run the program. So our idea to keep the grazing program running was to create this fund. But the problem is when you create the fund, we need to hire employees or contractors or some combination. And we have no money to start with because our leases only require payments twice a year, and the first payment has already been made. So the $300,000 is essentially seed money. The bill says that if it's not used, it reverts in 22, anything not used, and it really preserves an income stream to the general fund that, as Representative Stiver mentioned, in the biennial fiscal year that ended in 2019, returned over $340-something thousand to the general fund. It has averaged well over $300,000 every biennium going all the way back to the biennial year that ended in 2013. So really the $300,000 is seed money. It'll go back to the general fund and that isn't used, and then it'll preserve the grazing fee excess, whatever that might be, to the general fund.
So, my only question is, why not just pass the bill, but have it go, have the funds use the grazing fees and just don't start it for a year?
Mr. Chairman, it's a great question. We had much discussion in the interim that right now the Secretary of Defense memo was effective immediately, and it came out on July of 2019. The Major General Greg Porter, our Adjutant General, is assuming risk right now by continuing the grazing program. We don't know how long. It'll obviously take some period of time to hire AWIC employees or a contractor. The next set of lease payments is not due, I believe, until July, and that's only a part year payment. So we wouldn't have the funds in the fund until probably the beginning of 22 to start a contract or to hire employees. So that was the need for an amount for the seed money.
So how did you come up with the $300,000 and the number of employees it's going to take for grazing? Because that just seems like a lot to me. And how many employees does it involve?
Mr. Chairman, we estimated in a given year, at least 2,200 hours were expended in running the grazing program. You're talking about 61,000 acres. What's unique about Camp Guernsey and the grazing program is we regularly have to plan our military training, the uses of our ranges, and our grazers have to move cows. We have to move fences. We have to reconfigure some fire lanes and dirt roads and watering points. So we ask a lot of our grazers, but it also requires a lot of almost weekly management to move cows around the property. Because of that, we're essentially unsure if it'll take 3 employees. We're unsure if we can find somebody to bid on a contract to do it through a contractor, given the location of Guernsey, and then also just because we've never run the program that way before. And so the 3 at-will employees that is in the bill, we knew it was at least more than 1, given the number of hours we estimated federal employees were working on it. And we were concerned if we were limited to just 2, we wouldn't have guessed right. The $300,000 was basically akin, or it was tied to, that is the amount that has gone back to the general fund every year since 2012. And so we were just starting with what we thought we would have in order to run the program.
Well, and I guess that's what I don't understand. Why wouldn't you start with what it cost as opposed to what you have?
And Mr. Chairman, it essentially is because we're not sure how much it's going to cost. So when you look at a manager, what they do is they have to plan out forage for the year. They have to decide on the AUM that each forage area of the 11 leases is going to allow. They have to coordinate with the operations people about the training people coming in the spring and summer mostly. There's a lot to it. So we're thinking you're going to have to hire a manager type. And as you know, the cost of that with benefits, could be $125,000 or so. And then you actually need people to go out and count cows, help work with the grazers to move fence and all of that thing, more of a range rider kind of thing. Those we were estimating maybe $65,000 to $75,000 salary plus benefits. If it requires 2 of them to cover holidays and the busy time during the summer when we have really thousands of military people on the camp maneuvering, we came up with an estimate of somewhere in the $200,000 to $270,000 for salaries. We were concerned, so that was the number we talked about in committee, rounded up essentially to $300,000.
So if you're going to pay someone $125,000 to perform that job and $60,000 or $70,000 for a range rider, those aren't ranch jobs. Those are professional jobs. Those are more than what most state employees and even some agency heads make. So those numbers don't make sense to me. Did you have discussions on that?
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I can say is these were our estimates. And again, that includes benefits. It's not just salary, because as you know, we have the retirement contribution, the health benefit contribution. But sir, we'll try to make it work. We just didn't want to, because we're trying to preserve what has been a pretty healthy income stream to the general fund, and because we've never done this, we've just kind of farmed it out among the existing federal employees. We just didn't want to be hamstrung into creating a program and having to shut off grazing. But there was not a lot of analysis about the $300,000 number. We were just fairly sure it had to be something over $200,000 given our experience.
How many lessees do you have?
We currently have 11 leases, and they're held by 2 lessees. One lessee controls most of the leases.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just find it highly odd that with 2 leases, it's going to cost $300,000 to manage the activity of 2 leases or lessees. Being in the industry myself, that is just absurd, to be quite frank, that it's going to take that much. And so to me, the lessees would be responsible for moving the cattle. I don't know why the military department would be moving the cattle, and all within the contract of the lease. I think if the fences need moved, that can be part of the contract of the lease, and maybe it generates slightly less income because you charge a little bit less. That slightly less income is far better than a huge expenditure like this to what I would consider overmanage a very simple program. Annually, you don't need to go out and evaluate the amount of forage. That can happen up front, and it to me, like I said, this is just being over-evaluated and over managed, quite frankly. I cannot come up with where these numbers come from. And then when you start talking, and Chairman Nicholas brought this up, start talking the pay for these people, they are way out of whack. I'll take the job if that's what you're paying, and I think most of the members on this committee would take the job if that's what you're paying to do this kind of work. So I think from my perspective, this bill needs to go back to the drawing board, but maybe my advice to you would be to contact Director Budd at the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust, as he has extensive knowledge in managing these kinds of facilities. And I think a partnership with the Natural Trust and the military department could effectuate the management of this facility, and a simple phone call from one of the federally paid employees to the lessee saying, we will be in area A7 next week to conduct a training. You need to have the cows out of there. I don't know that would be against military rules, but I just can't come up with any reason to spend this kind of money to manage of what should be a simply managed operation.
Go ahead. Any response?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, I understand, but the thing to always remember about this, and I do respect your experience, these are not standard leases. This is not empty ground that you just turn over to the lessee and let him graze his cattle. This is active training area where we're shooting rockets, we have tanks maneuvering. It is a lot more complicated than just managing an empty piece of ground like we do with the school parcels with the state lands. We are simply trying to protect an income stream to the general fund. This through the interim with the Joint Transportation Committee, this is what we came up with. And we talked with the state lands folks, the Attorney General, and we've been grazing out there for decades. So we know it is, we have a good concept of how the amount of work it requires in order to manage these spaces on an active military training area, especially given the 61,000 acre size of the leased property. The cost of $300,000 is really an upfront cost to preserve what should be a continued income stream to the general fund. Without this bill, grazing will have to shut down at Camp Guernsey Our leases that were negotiated in 2016 have our ability to turn them off if we have to. So I'm kind of at a loss to say this is what all our experts in dealing with the committee worked on in the interim, and we think it's our best methodology to make this work. And if we've overestimated, then more money will return to the general fund.
Further questions? Any other comments? Representative Stiver?
Not at this time.
Committee, what's your pleasure? We got to do something. Do we have a motion and just
Mr.
lower the
Chairman,
number?
Mr. Chairman, that's what I was getting to. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. So I would move, Mr. Chairman, if I may, on page 4, line 14, the 3 at-will employees, I would adjust that to 1. I think that's within our purview to adjust employee counts and dollar values. And then I would reduce on line 22, the 300,000 to 50,000.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. So I'm not sure that we can line item out the number of section 2. We can just, I think we can only change the dollar amount. And so I would do
I
a
was
friendly
thinking we
amendment.
could,
Yeah,
I was thinking we could adjust personnel, but
I don't think so.
since they're probably not directly funded, you're correct. So I would remove that from my amendment and just move the dollars from 300,000 to 50, Mr. Chairman.
I'd make a friendly amendment to change it to 150.
And
Why
I'd
not? What the heck?
Yeah, I'd second that too.
Okay, at 150. Any further discussion?
Who will give me 2?
I'll do the contract for 150.
Okay. Those in favor of the amendment, raise their hand. All those opposed, that motion carries. Back on the bill. Do we have any further discussion? Chris, if you're listening, if for some reason that does not work, let us know. We'll just give us, we appreciate being updated on it and how it transpires. And Don, you're the same thing, so that if for something comes up, you can probably talk with the gov and find some dollars if you actually have to have them. But we hope it works, and if it doesn't, then we'll see you back again.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate your comments. Okay, question. As amended.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee are voting on House Bill 17, range management at military training areas as amended. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Schwartz.
Aye.
Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
No.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. And so we'll have to present our amendment on the floor. And Representative Walters, I select you to present the amendment.
Sounds good.
All right. Did we have any other amendments that we needed to that'll come up on the floor? I thought we did.
No.
Well, we had your bill. And so you can do that one too, Tom.
Yes. And I'll visit with Representative Summers on that to see if we want to bring it up right away or not.
Okay, sounds good. I
So-
think that clears the deck, does it not?
Mr. Chairman, what do we have? Have we got any bills on general file tomorrow that come out of appropriations?
I don't know the answer to that. Because we don't fully know what general file is tomorrow, do we?
I know. Okay, we'll talk about floor management in the morning after we see what comes out.
Yeah, and it's, we come in at 9 tomorrow, he said, just so everyone remembers.
Right.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.